a big challenge, right? Infection is an issue in the hospital. Patient, wound, surgery, cancer. Cancer patient die of infection, right? Steroid use, people, so antibiotics is there, but the problem with antibiotics is that we are running every day shortlisted in terms of newer set of antibiotics. And the existing antibiotics are becoming resistant, so there's a big, big issue.
Is that because some doctors just prescribe it just to get people?
Correct. I don't know about the culture. I think maybe ask Ismail or ask Gary or anybody else, or I don't know what other in South America. What happens is that, and again, even African American population disparity. If you look at the percentage of African American not having a health insurance, is high. So what do? So it's a self-prescription. Many a time people prescribe medicine for themselves on their own, based upon the information which is out there, and get their hands on medicine which are floating in Canadian market or any market. And he will agree with me, that's why I know, because the cultural wise, Africans and Asians, when they go, they bring antibiotics from their countries, and they know because the American doctors are not going to prescribe them, they're going to do it self-prescription. Who cares? So I would a kind of a joke, like what you call, there's one of this Indian guy, he says that I never realized the treatment for all diseases in Canada is that good. He made a joke of it, but that's true. Because the moment the person is going to get sick, infection, he'll have fever, right? So what is going to take for fever? Advil, without knowing the cause of fever. And I myself, till this pandemic, used to think that don't do anything for a while, it's going to run its course and disappear. That's pretty much the norm. But now things are changing. Yeah, COVID taught us a lesson, but again, that lesson, let me put it this way, the governments didn't learn the lessons. I just imagine that in the history of medicine, never did the government buy a vaccine before it was made, before it was tested, before it was found efficacious, and give those companies money ahead of time. That's what the US government did. Right? It never occurred, so there was so much panic and so much economical stress. But the same company which made this COVID vaccine, and they said, we're not making any profit, when the African companies asked them to give them right to make their own vaccine, they refused. They say copyright issue. So what does it tell you? Money. They will let people die in Africa because they don't care. If they had cared, they would have given them, okay, I found the cure, you make it. It doesn't cost anything, it's just like a printer, a copy print, like a PDF. He's going to get PDF, he's going to give it to every one of you. I'm just kidding, but that's what normally happens. What does it take for a person to make copies of PDF? Nothing, there's no energy there. But unfortunately, that's the way the world we are living in. So you can ask me any question, and then again, if you go back to, let me finish with this one. So, where did it go? So if you go for example, like YouTube, and this is my learning, I'm not going to impose my style on you, but the sketchy, you say sketchy microbiology, if you write sketchy microbiology, right? And then you can see all the bacteria. You see that over there? Salmonella, you name it, Campylobacter jejuni, HIV, Corona. So even if you go and kind of look at your spare time, something is gonna stick in your mind. Right? And if you can come up, if you have that, maybe you find out you have a skill set of doing better than that, then you make your own company. You don't even have to become a pharmacist, you make your own company, come up with an idea. You see that? So,
Money for that.
yeah. People do that. I mean, I'm pretty sure this guy and you can see I started off using his stuff 11 years ago. I started teaching this course in 2008 when the first class came. So, what, like 16 years? But now, when he developed that, a bigger company bought the rights. You can sell it to other companies. But I mean, I like it. And you can see many of them. So in my kind of teaching philosophy is so much information is available in terms of content matter that why do students would want me to come and open my PowerPoint and start reading my PowerPoints while you guys are doing whatever you're doing? I think the waste is of time. It's rather you read it, ahead of me, and then ask me any question and we can discuss. Or I can kind of go to a higher level and tell you, well, what is it in the news of microbiology today? So that was a part of the assignment that you talked about. So I'm going to open it up, because you can see these were the two ones we had to cover this week. So since there's a back-to-back lecture today, so we already talked about mycobacteria, mycoplasma is there, important. And the reason, if you go through my PowerPoint on my YouTube, you will see that we were under the impression that most of the antibiotics are targeting cell wall, right? Keep that in mind, cell walls are different. So you cannot use the same antibiotic for gram-positive or gram-negative because their cell wall is different. They used to use the same antibiotic to treat TB. It didn't work because the antibiotic is different. And it is resistant because it's like, if you look at it, it's like sticky. It is like, you saw that Gary was talking about the latent. So what happens is, you know how many bacteria you need? Look at in my lectures, I did in one of my lectures talk about that. How many bacteria do you need to get you infected? Sometimes million. And millions are, if you dip something on like a pencil, like on this, in the tip of it, if I touch this one, I'm going to pick up million bacteria. These are many bacteria, like this. And for some of the diseases, you just need only one bacteria. And one of that diseases is TB. So anybody can walk in, right, and cough and talk and sneeze, and the bacteria is there. You're going to pick it up. It's going to go in your system and hide there and wait till the time comes when that bacteria will come up to cause infection. The Americans initially were not interested, the American companies were not interested in putting their money in anti-TB treatment. Because they said, oh, it is Asian, African issue because of poverty, because of malnutrition, because of too many people living. So these are compounding factors, which is true. Like for example, if 10 people are living in one home and one has a TB, so everyone will get TB. So they only realized that when their HIV patients start getting TB, then they start investing. So every HIV start, and you will look, if you look at pathophysiology, you will see why did HIV patients, right? And I don't know how many of you have watched my, well, you haven't started virology, HIV YouTube. Did anybody watch that? Okay. I mean, I usually, what I normally do is I start with the, what we call impact slide. Let's see. Hold on. So one slide, if you pay attention, and you can make your own impact slide, will give you an idea as to what's going on. Let's see. So these are immunology lectures. So you can even, what I'm going to teach you is already there. Let's see, where is this is this is my first for HIV. So you can see from here, this is a picture on Time magazine, and start with cursed yet blessed. So they pick up this thing just to kind of give you an idea, you know. So I'm going to play like first few minutes, and then we'll discuss that as a part of MTV or whatever you want to discuss.
HIV, as most of you know, is one of those immunological diseases that have popped up in the last 35 years, and remains a challenge. Like diabetes mellitus.
I talk too much. I don't want to. Let me see. I just want to jump to what I want to jump to. Okay. So see that this was an article came in 1993. I can't pronounce the name correctly. Probably Agnes Moniva. So this is article, the science article. When you pick up an article. So has never thought of herself as a lucky woman, desperately poor. She works as a prostitute out of her home, a tiny tin roof, but not on outskirts of Nairobi. So there's a concept in immunology called Nairobi prostitutes. To feed her family of 5, she entertains as many as 10 clients a day on her children's bed, charging going rate of 25 cents a trick. So, but that's the social economic condition of HIV. But the problem was that she'd been doing that for 10 years, and she herself never get HIV. So this is now the question. Let me see, we'll talk about that later. Here. So this was then a big article, and they say, well, how come? And she was not the only one.
I learned about this before. I think like some people can be immune to HIV.
Yeah. So this is the thing is that, like, for some people may be immune to HIV is a hypothesis. Then you have to prove it. You can't say, you have to give a reason. So they found out. I mean, whosoever worked over there. So they said they have got intense exposure and they're HIV. Then they wanted to look at their profile. So they looked at their profile, right? And let me see, do I talk about that? Because this will come. Then you have to give immunological reasons for that. So these are immunological reasons that are there, which are they found out. But eventually, she did get. I don't know, I mean, how many of you, I don't blame you for that as well, because immunology will come. If you heard what he said about the MTB, he said gamma interferon. He said that the gamma radiation, you want to put it. So interferon gamma is a drug that we use, interferon gamma. And when we say gamma, this means it may be alpha, beta, gamma. So this is interferon. And I remember many years ago, I mean, just like many of the students know that I'm not practicing right these days as an MD, but sometimes people ask me like over the counter or curbside advice. So this one student, and she shows me a lesion on the skin, and I normally don't comment, and I would always say go and see a physician and so on and so forth. And so I just asked her a few questions. And then I found out, based upon my training, that it was viral. Like it was viral. And it was herpes. So I had to kind of say, you have to go home and don't come to the class and see the physician. And also keep in mind that you have to rush to the physician because the treatment option is for the first 72 hours. So if you miss that initial block, then you have a problem. And I also told her the treatment for that is gamma interferon. Isn't it? So some of the things in our medical world, like for example, you wonder, the pharmacists when they talk to each other, are you friends when you talk to each other, being in the same circle, you kind of use words and things and phrases that make sense to everybody. Like for example, if you say DAST, you know what DAST is. You know? So these are the words like gamma interferon. Now, irrespective of whatever is there, you can watch over here. So there is a window of opportunity, a time when you have to treat, otherwise it goes out of control. So now I'm thinking retrospectively that this is in 1993, so it's like 30 years ago. Now they were talking about some people were resistant, or let me put it, not resistant, prone to COVID-19 more than others. If you go and listen to they were saying women were more prone, men were more prone, women were resistant, right? And the older people were more prone than the younger people. And then one of the things that they found out, and I talked about that in one of my electives of infectious diseases, that those people who had more chances of getting COVID-19 was those who were deficient in interferon alpha. So that itself is $1 billion finding, because if it is true, right, somebody's going to make $1 billion. That's what it means. So you have to read those news. That's what the medical liaison job is. So you have to read all this news and kind of lead the pharmaceutical industry to go in one way, to invest the money. This is a drug design thing, but it needs your basic information. So this thing you could read on your own. It's already theirs. I'm not going to discover anything. I'm just saying nothing has changed in terms of the basic structures. But things are changing rapidly day to day. And it kind of amazes me as well. Right? So if you are in that mode right from the beginning, then it's going to lead you to something that's important. And then you can go back. If this is what your bread and butter is, then you'll be interested, that you'll be willing to put in as much effort you can. So anyway, is there any other thing that if you went through the clinical part of bacteriology, other than the basic concepts, that you want me to elaborate and you want me to talk about, or something that you think is worth spending our next half an hour on? So you can see from here, we were supposed to actually go all this bacterial section. These two were scheduled for this week. We pretty much covered that. Then we have to jump to virology. And I think my intention for virology is that I would rather want you to be ahead of me, because these lectures are a basic concept, and I think you're going to be exposed to antiviral therapy and the new viruses. So I'm going to talk about that. So I'm going to introduce you with the latest and very current information of virology, if you do me a favor and kind of read ahead of me, so I don't have to kind of go back and tell you, because if I have to go back and teach you the basic, then waste my time. So any questions or any concerns on the bacteriology part in terms of your understanding, in terms of your knowledge? So this whole kind of subject is tied with DAS 7 and 8, I told you already. Okay, and then your challenges, my challenge is that I've done a lot of research. I find out that if you present the same material in different formats to the student, they kind of better grasp as compared to just me talking and kind of boring lectures. Because I was a student in yours, in your seats many years ago. It's so boring when a teacher talks a monotonous way of PowerPoint, reading over and over again, and then multitask. People usually are multitasking. They're doing whatever they want to do. But any questions? Yes? Anything that comes to your mind? One of the things for scientists is to think weird. So it looks weird in the beginning, but if you go into that direction, it's going to happen. I tried in Pius classes to kind of give points for the people, I'll kind of pick you up for asking questions, but I'm not going to do that. It doesn't really help. So you have to kind of be more participative. You don't have an exam tomorrow, right? That's all one of the reasons people say, please give us a time, I'm going to prepare for that. Any person that you come across media, you come across news, and you come across information, people, you talk to people, you have families, you know. So what do you see? One of the things that you have to observe. I think those people who have kids, they've already become pediatricians because they had so many visits to the physician, they pretty much know what the doctor is going to say and what the doctor is going to prescribe. So it's more of a learning experience. People talk about that, people discuss that. And I had some of my students doing elective with me, and they have to find some mainstream, drama series or movies that talk about infection. Any other question or concern? Any general question?
I was wondering for these bacteria, we have different classes of them, gram-positive, gram-negative, mycoplasma. Were they all these were as one type of bacteria in the beginning, and then they had different kinds of mutations and evolved from one another, or?
Okay, good question. I actually love to discuss that because keep that in mind. Like for example, what I would do, I like this concept. You write like Google or whatever, Robert Koch, right? So you can imagine this, that Koch, let me go for, let's see, and if you look at my initial lectures, I myself like to explain people the concept. I mean, this is exactly what you answered the question. So 1843, right? You can see 1843. So it's not that long ago, where a German physician, right? He was the first to associate disease with infection. Prior to that, people would never know that this is called infection. So you can imagine in a society, he had to struggle. And the reason being that there was no microscope. So Leeuwenhoek, if you go look at, there's a very interesting topics on there. And you can see he did got his Nobel Prize on that. People used to think weird ideas, ghosts and this and that and this and that. I mean, to the modern world, 1843 is not that long. You say maybe about 200 years ago. So imagine people had no concept at all. Though they were physicians, they were treatment, but so he was the one who got this theory into, right? So he's a German. The other guy, if you look at that, is Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur. So this was the time when Europeans were way ahead of. So this is another. He's a French pharmacist. See? Pretty much the same time, and he was the one who picked up this information and kind of figured out that why do we have to boil? So people are having TB because the teats of the cows were infected with TB. So they used to milk the cow, right? And the TB, they drink the milk and they get TB. So he came up with an idea that if we boil the milk, which is called pasteurization, which we do even today, all your milk is pasteurized by his name. So he gave an idea, whether you believe it or not, there is something there that is killed by it. So these two, Robert Koch is saying that there's bacteria. At that time, probably there were viruses and fungi, but he would think of bacteria. Right? And if you look at his theories, you will see that he wanted to treat it. So everything started 200. So we are talking about all this microbiology, immunology is even later. Right? And the reason being, and I'm going to all kind of, I can tell you the reason, and one, so this is the Europeans at that time were dominant. So this was the guy, you can see over here, pretty much the same area, is called the father of microbiology. So he saw this something running around in water. He could see that he invented the microscope. So he said he was the Dutch microbiologist, and the golden age Dutch science you can see from here. He is the one who, because he could see something moving. He said there are structures. And then Robert Koch and he said they wanted to grow it. And this is how the microbiology science developed. Right? And why did they not talk of viruses? Because the viruses they used to think they are particles. They don't even think they're living. That's still an issue. But what comes to your mind, why the viruses were not discovered at the time 200 years ago? Well, of course. They were too small. They couldn't see through the microscope because the electron microscope was not discovered. So then this guy who comes with electron microscope, that's where now you see. So this is like a history of microbiology to this level, right? And then again, you can imagine they're not talking about treatment. And people weren't buying it. People weren't buying it. They said, you guys are crazy. They used to think scientists are crazy because they say, oh, they don't believe in God. There's a religious, there was a time where the, the strongest opposition was the people, they say, no. So this is exactly what was happening. And then again, this another guy who came, and you can see they're all either physicians or Alexander Fleming. And he's there for about I would say 1945. So before 1945, there's no antibiotics. So keep that in mind. They discovered this bacteria with no treatment. In 1945, he's the British physician, right? And he accidentally discovered antibiotic. So he had this, because they knew that bacteria can be grown, so he was growing bacteria, right? And one of his students probably, the rule for the labs are strict, probably it wasn't maintained at that time. So he left his petri dishes, the small dishes, over there unwashed. And just like you leave your food on the table and you come after a month and it's all got a fungus. So he noticed was that there was fungus all over the bacterial plate. Well, that's what something's got rotten. But this is where the scientific observation comes. But he also noticed that, wherever there was fungus, there was no bacteria. So he thought the fungus is releasing something which is killing bacteria. So that fungus was penicillin. This is how he discovered penicillin. Very interesting. So you can see most of these people come up with an idea based upon observation, because the scientific observation is something that people look differently. You know, like for example, I told you as a physician we have trained. I'm looking at you. You know, so one of the things that we train is general physical examination. Just by looking at you, I can screen you. You know, of any of the diseases which are noticeable in general physical examination. You know, and if I pay attention, the behavior, your body language, the cues, whether you're attentive, you're not attentive, you're paying attention to me, it's easy. You're not paying attention to me. You're doing eye contact and you're busy somewhere else. So these are the cues that you normally pick up. They're kind of trained in that. So this is one of the things, and we have these courses for, I have like a 5-student these days, we have this elective course of, I think Dr. Pugliese is teaching the scientific method, but in the clinical part we have this elective, PHAR 6502, probably you will be allowed to take that. So this is what we have to develop that. This is what they are looking for in R&D. When they interview you, they ask you a question and say, you know, that's what I just said, ask even a weird question. Because that weird question may lead to a big scientific discovery, as these people did in the past. It could be a very, very weird. I mean, the information of this Nairobi prostitute, who would have thought that? But there are people who mind things like that. So this is exactly, if you look at the theory of biology of Robert Koch, Louis Pasteur, Alexander Fleming, right? And then there is another guy who was the inventor of what do you call immunology. People before that didn't know. Now the concept is we don't have to give any medicine from outside. The body itself produces all these things. And I see myself immunology as the fastest subject. So every day I mean I have to read it. Old theories are gone and new theories are coming up. Any other question? Any other thought? Did I answer the question? I just kind of distracted you further. So the thing is that your original question was when the bacteria are there, so there's a war between us and bacteria. But bacteria are smarter. Because the same guy, for example, not the Fleming one, but the Pasteur, he was also the one he found out about, you know, how to make wine, for example, you know, how to use bacteria for, you know, industrial purposes. I think 10 years ago, I remember, there was a toxic factory in Wisconsin or somewhere else which was having a toxic product of arsenic or something like that. And they were dumping it in open in terms of what you call sanitation issue. So they advertised that they need a help from a microbiologist. Just think, why would they do that? If you were a microbiologist, what can you do to help a industry which has a toxic waste? I give you an example, maybe it wasn't arsenic, but what comes to your mind? This is a critical thinking question to you. Yeah, just make it wild. One of the things that I would teach you as a student is that learn to make wild guesses. Teachers don't mind that. Don't think that, oh, they're going to look down upon you. No. It's always good to ask questions or just throw your ideas. Who cares? Think. Yeah. Just think of any weird idea. Why would they do that? Now you've been reading microbiology for the last month or so. Now the question is that microbiologist was hired because he had to find out a bacteria which needs that particular arsenic, whatever, as a growth factor for itself. They're gonna throw that bacteria in the garbage, and that's what they do. If you look at garbage sewage, this is exactly what happens over here in the city of Chicago. It's just like probiotics. You put the bacteria kind of takes control of it and digests is and removes the toxic. So you can imagine that happened, I mean, I don't know whether you know the denim jeans, the blue jeans, they're made by bacteria. The colors are made by bacteria. The drugs are made by bacteria, E. coli makes it. So you can see the industrial use is amazing. So don't think of, thing in a bad way. There are always some good ways to do that. The new medicines we want to give for antiviral are, we're going to incorporate into bacteria and give it to you. Are you guys with me, or do you have to run to your sites? Run to your sites. Okay, so we will start with virology for Wednesday. And then again, I think I'll just give you a general idea of the DNA and RNA virus. But if you read, I don't intend to repeat my lectures. I'm going to go to what is the current treatment, because that's what's taking the big toll these days. Right? So do your part, and we'll jump up to the next part.
So we're doing mycoplasma and virology.
Mycoplasma, you can read it on your own. There's nothing that I do. There's no mycoplasma. The only important thing is that
They don't have to go.
if you don't have cell wall, the question is going to come is that you cannot use antibiotic for that, because there's no cell wall. What are we going to kill?